A grand ballroom can be the last place anyone is ever seen. Behind the glittering chandeliers and elegant gowns of high society events lies a dark history of guests who vanished without a trace. You are about to uncover the chilling true stories of those who disappeared after the ball, from Gilded Age heiresses to figures in royal circles. By the end, you will understand the shocking vulnerabilities hidden by immense wealth and privilege. We will explore how a simple social outing could become a perfect crime scene, and why some of these century-old mysteries remain stubbornly unsolved. What does it truly mean to disappear from a world designed to see you gold and crystal, glittered under 1,000 electric lights, a spectacle of almost unimaginable wealth? These Gilded Age balls were not just parties. They were declarations of power, where industrial fortunes were paraded in rooms dripping with imported silk and solid marble. Guests wore gowns sewn with real pearls and jewels worth more than a city block, moving through crowds so thick that a single individual could become anonymous in an instant. The very scale of these events, designed to overwhelm the senses, created a strange paradox. You were at the center of the social universe, yet you could be utterly alone. In the swirling chaos of a cotillion or the shadowy recesses of a vast conservatory, a person could simply step out of the light. A whispered conversation in a crowded hallway could be the last time anyone truly noted their presence. The music, the laughter, the constant hum of conversation, it all provided the perfect cover, muffling a final footstep or a stifled cry. This immense privilege, this fortress of money, held a hidden vulnerability. The very crowd hired to witness your glory could also be the crowd that failed to see you vanish. Dorothy Arnold seemed to have it all. The daughter of a prosperous perfume importer, she lived in a grand mansion on New York's Upper East Side, her days filled with the glittering routines of a Gilded Age socialite. But Dorothy harbored a secret ambition that set her apart from her peers, a dream her wealthy family considered utterly disgraceful. She wanted to be a writer. She had already sold one story to a magazine, a small success she celebrated quietly, but her latest manuscript had just been rejected. This professional disappointment, combined with the immense pressure of her family's expectations, cast a shadow over her life in December of 1910. She had attended a society ball the previous evening, a whirl of music and light, but the following afternoon found her simply running errands, dressed in a fashionable blue suit and a large black velvet hat. She was last seen walking cheerfully down Fifth Avenue. She bought a box of chocolates, exchanged pleasant greetings with an acquaintance, and then she was gone. Dorothy Arnold, a young woman at the very heart of New York society, simply vanished into the crisp winter air, leaving behind one of the most perplexing mysteries of the era. Her cheerful demeanor that afternoon made the vanishing all the more baffling. Dorothy left her family's home intending to buy a small luxury, a box of chocolates from a confectioner on Fifth Avenue. But the simple errand became a key piece of the puzzle when the shop clerk's statement conflicted with the family's later account. The clerk was certain Dorothy had been in the store, yet her family initially and strangely denied she had ever made it there. This tiny discrepancy over a candy purchase hinted at a much larger secret, a hidden narrative the Arnolds seemed desperate to control. Was Dorothy merely buying sweets, or was the shop a prearranged meeting point for someone her family would never approve of? perhaps a suitor from a different social class or a contact from her writing life. Another compelling theory suggests this was not an abduction, but an escape. The rejected manuscript and her family's scorn for her literary dreams could have pushed her to a desperate decision. That afternoon, carrying a small sum of money, she may have been taking the first quiet steps toward a new, anonymous life, one where she was not Dorothy Arnold of the famous perfume fortune, but simply a writer free from society's constraints. Yet if she did plan such a flight, the execution was flawless, leaving not a single trace behind. The mystery deepens with every plausible explanation, each one raising more questions than it answers. The Arnolds' response to their daughter's disappearance was as puzzling as the vanishing itself. For a family of immense social standing, their immediate reaction was not to alert the city's police force, but to retreat behind a wall of silence. Dorothy was missing for a full 24 hours before her mother even informed her father. And then they waited another agonizing day before taking any form of public action. In an age where reputation was everything, the fear of scandal seemed to outweigh the terror of a missing child. Their first call was not to a police precinct, but to a private detective agency. They dispatched their own son, Dorothy's brother John, to search the hospitals and morgues, a grim and lonely task that reflected their desperate hope to contain the matter within the family's private sphere. This self-imposed quarantine of the investigation had devastating consequences. Every hour they spent whispering with private agents was an hour lost for the official investigation. The trail, already cold from the winter air, was growing frigid. Crucial witnesses who might have seen Dorothy on that December afternoon were not immediately questioned. Potential leads in the bustling city faded from memory. By the time the police were finally notified nearly a week later, the window to solve the case was already beginning to close. The very wealth and influence that should have marshaled every resource instead created a barrier, a fortress of privacy that may have ultimately protected the Arnold name while sacrificing the chance to find Dorothy. Over a century later, Dorothy Arnold's fate remains a haunting blank space filled with three persistent theories. The first, and perhaps the most tragic, suggests she died from a botched, illegal abortion. In an era where such procedures were not only dangerous, but utterly taboo. A young, unmarried woman from a prominent family would have faced unimaginable pressure to conceal a pregnancy. This theory posits that her cheerful errand was a cover for a desperate, secret appointment, and that a medical catastrophe led to her death, a scandal her powerful family would have gone to any length to hide, even orchestrating a permanent disappearance to protect their name. The second theory is one of deliberate escape. Dorothy, stifled by her family's dismissal of her writing and their control over her life, may have finally chosen freedom. She could have been meeting a suitor her parents forbade, using that walk down Fifth Avenue as her final moments in their world before eloping to begin a new life under a new name. It is a romantic notion, but one that begs the question, could anyone, even with careful planning, vanish so completely without ever slipping up, without a single credible sighting in all the years that followed? The third and most chilling possibility is one of random violence. Perhaps Dorothy was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, falling victim to a street crime or an opportunistic stranger in a city that, for all its gleaming wealth, held dark corners and dangers for anyone walking alone. Each theory carries its own weight of plausibility and its own deep sorrow, yet none has ever been proven, leaving her story suspended in a state of perpetual and unsettling mystery. The Dorothy Arnold case left a permanent scar on the gilded facade of New York society. Its enduring grip on our imagination stems from a perfect storm of unanswered questions. There was no crime scene, no body, not a single piece of physical evidence to signal a definitive end. This profound lack of closure creates a void where speculation flourishes endlessly. Without a grave, Dorothy Arnold never truly died in the public consciousness. She merely stepped out of the frame, leaving us to wonder what the next picture might have been. Compounding this mystery was the formidable power of the Arnold family itself. Their immense wealth and social standing, which should have commanded every resource, instead acted as a barrier. Their initial secrecy and reliance on private investigators over the police suggested they were managing a scandal, not searching for a daughter. This response became a dark blueprint for future high society tragedies, demonstrating how a family's influence could be used not to illuminate the truth, but to shroud it in a protective silence. The case proved that the social register could be a prison as much as a privilege, its pages holding secrets as easily as they listed names. Dorothy's disappearance was a crack in the polished marble of elite life, a chilling reminder that the very forces designed to protect a reputation could, in the end, obliterate a person. While the Arnold case exposed the dark side of private wealth, another disappearance just over a century earlier proved that even the full authority of a state could be powerless against a perfect vanishing. The story of Benjamin Bathurst is a plunge into the shadowy world of early 19th century international espionage. In November of 1809, this young and promising British diplomat was returning home from a high-stakes mission in Vienna. Europe was at war, with Napoleon's empire stretching across the continent, and Bathurst carried sensitive dispatches. His journey required him to pass through hostile territory, including the town of Perleberg in Prussia. After attending a formal ball held in his honor by the local Prussian officials, a seemingly routine stop for the night turned into an eternal mystery. The following evening, as his coach was being prepared to depart from the courtyard of a local inn, Bathurst stepped outside, allegedly to check on the horses. His valet saw him walk around to the front of the team, and then he was simply gone. He never reappeared from the other side. Benjamin Bathurst, a trusted envoy of the British crown, had evaporated into the cold Prussian dusk. The immediate aftermath was one of frantic confusion. His traveling companions searched the inn and the stables, finding nothing. A local search party was assembled, scouring the town and the surrounding river with no result. It was as if the earth had opened up and swallowed him. The only potential clue was a pair of pistols, found discarded near the inn's gate, but they offered no real direction. The case immediately exploded into an international incident, with the British government accusing the French of abduction and murder. The timing and location made Napoleonic intrigue the most compelling theory. Bathurst had been openly critical of the French emperor, and his diplomatic pouch would have been a rich prize for French agents operating in the region. Had he been seized by a covert team, silenced to prevent his intelligence from reaching London? Or was the culprit someone even closer, a seemingly friendly Prussian official from the ball who was secretly in the pay of the French? The mystery was so profound that it even spawned a persistent, though likely fictional, rumor that Bathurst had been walled up alive within the very inn from which he disappeared, a ghost story born from the sheer impossibility of his fate. The mission that placed Benjamin Bathurst in that Perleberg courtyard was one of immense geopolitical consequence. He was not merely a diplomat on a routine journey. He was a key player in a desperate British attempt to forge a powerful coalition against Napoleon Bonaparte. The French emperor's forces dominated the European continent, and Britain stood nearly alone. Bathurst had been dispatched to the court of Austria, a former ally that had been soundly defeated by Napoleon, to secretly negotiate their re-entry into the war. His diplomatic pouch contained promises, strategies, and intelligence critical to rekindling the fight. This was not just diplomacy, it was shadow warfare, and the information he carried made him a walking target. The political tension was so thick, it was a presence in every room he entered. French spies were known to be everywhere, watching, listening, waiting for any opportunity to disrupt British plans. For Napoleon's agents, intercepting a lone British envoy carrying such incendiary dispatches would have been a monumental intelligence coup. Silencing him permanently would have been an even greater prize, ensuring those British plans to rally Austria never reached London. This is why the theory of a politically motivated assassination by French agents remains so compelling. His very public attendance at a ball, a necessary display of diplomatic normalcy, would have made him exceptionally easy to identify and track. His subsequent disappearance, so clean and so absolute, has all the hallmarks of a professional, state-sponsored operation. It was not a random crime of opportunity, but a calculated strike in a hidden war, where a man was not just murdered, but erased from the battlefield entirely. The most baffling piece of the entire affair appeared days later, miles away. A local woman came forward with Benjamin Bathurst's greatcoat, a heavy, expensive garment unmistakably his. She claimed to have found it inside her own inn, located a short distance from the scene of his disappearance. This was not a clue found in a ditch or a forest. It was discovered neatly placed inside another establishment, as if someone had deliberately left it there. The greatcoat's reappearance made no logical sense. If French agents had abducted or killed him, why would they risk returning such an identifiable item to a public place, so close to the scene of the crime? It was an act that seemed to taunt the investigators, a piece of the puzzle that fit nowhere. One theory suggests it was a grim message, a way for his captors to confirm his fate without ever producing a body. Another, more chilling idea is that the coat was planted by someone entirely different, a local with their own secret, perhaps to muddy the waters or to implicate another party in the complex web of European alliances. This single piece of evidence transformed the mystery. It was no longer just a story of a man who vanished, but of a man whose belongings began to reappear, ghost-like, confounding every attempt to find him. The greatcoat did not provide answers. It only deepened the silence surrounding his fate, leaving a question that has echoed for generations. How does a man disappear while his coat comes back? The greatcoat left behind in a Perleberg inn created more questions than it answered. a ghostly echo of a man erased by international intrigue. But not all disappearances after a dance are shrouded in the fog of state espionage. Some strike at the very heart of a community, leaving a wound that never fully heals. On a brilliantly sunny Australia day in January 1966, 3 well-mannered children set out for a day at the beach. Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont were seen by countless people as they boarded a bus for the short trip to Glenelg Beach in Adelaide. They were a familiar sight, and their parents had trusted them to make the journey alone before. But this time, they never came home. The disappearance of the 3 Beaumont children became a national tragedy, a case that shattered the innocence of an entire country and spawned one of the most extensive manhunts in Australian history. While they were officially last seen at the beach, their story is inextricably woven with the presence of a nearby community dance hall, a place that adds a deeply unsettling layer to the mystery. Persistent, though unconfirmed, witness accounts describe the children in the company of a tall, blonde, sun-tanned man near that very hall. Some reports even suggested the older sister, Jane, had been seen playing with other children near the building's entrance, or that a man matching that description had been seen at a ballroom in the area. This was not a grand Gilded Age ball, but a local venue for weekend dances, a place of simple community joy that, in this case, may have become a sinister lure. The idea that their disappearance could be connected to such a social hub, a place where a stranger could blend in effortlessly, transformed the case from a simple beachside tragedy into something far more calculated and chilling. The dance hall represented a space of trust and normalcy, a fact a predator could have exploited with horrifying ease. A man who appeared friendly and familiar, who perhaps offered to buy the children lunch or promised them a glimpse backstage at the hall, would not have seemed out of place. He could have used the rhythms of a community dance, the coming and going of crowds, as the perfect camouflage for an unthinkable crime. The possibility links this Australian heartbreak directly to the pattern we have seen before, where the social whirl of a dance, whether in a grand ballroom or a local hall, provides the noise and motion that allows someone to vanish without a sound. Witness statements from that sunny day at Glenelg Beach painted a hauntingly consistent portrait of a stranger. Multiple people recalled seeing the 3 fair-haired Beaumont children in the company of a tall, athletic man with blonde, sun-bleached hair. He was described as friendly and tanned, appearing entirely at ease with the youngsters. Jane, Arna, and Grant were seen laughing and playing with him near the sand, their behavior so normal and unafraid that it failed to raise any immediate alarm. One witness even reported seeing the older sister, Jane, lying on a towel next to this man, a detail that suggested a significant passage of time and a growing familiarity. This was not a fleeting encounter. It was a sustained interaction, a carefully built rapport that disarmed not only the children, but everyone around them. The man did not look like a monster. He looked like a kindly older brother or a fun uncle, a figure of trust in a public space. This chilling normalcy is what made his presence so lethal, and why these witness accounts became the agonizing core of the investigation. How could someone so visible, so clearly remembered by multiple onlookers, simply evaporate without leaving a name or a clear path to follow? The police sketches of this blonde man were plastered across the nation, his face etched into the Australian consciousness, yet his identity remained a maddening mystery. His connection to the nearby dance hall added a sinister logic to the entire tragedy. The venue was a popular spot, a place where a single man would not stand out. He could have been a regular, a visitor from out of town, or simply someone who knew the rhythms of the place well enough to use it as a stage. The dance hall provided a plausible reason for a well-dressed, presentable man to be in the area, and it offered a potential destination. It is a heartbreaking thought, but he may have used the promise of seeing the hall, or of getting a cool drink inside, as the final lure to draw the children away from the crowded beach. The coming and going of dancers would have provided the perfect cover for a group to slip away unnoticed, their departure masked by the cheerful chaos of a community enjoying a holiday. Early police investigations were immediately drawn to this theory, combing through the dance hall's guest lists and questioning its patrons. Public speculation, fueled by the vivid witness descriptions, quickly solidified around the idea of a predator who operated not in shadowy alleys, but in the bright, open spaces of everyday life, using social venues as his hunting ground. He did not hide from society. He used its own routines and trust against it. The blonde man was a ghost who walked in plain sight, and his ability to do so made every public space feel suddenly, terrifyingly vulnerable. The search for the Beaumont children revealed a terrifying truth, that a friendly face in a crowd could be the most dangerous weapon of all. This pattern of trust betrayed would surface again, not on a sunlit Australian beach, but within the cloistered world of American old money. Helen Brack was the widow of a multi-millionaire candy magnate, living a life of luxury in a Chicago suburb. In February 1977, she returned from a trip to Florida and Kentucky, a journey that included a glittering society ball. She was last seen alive by her houseman after arriving home. Then she simply ceased to exist. Helen Brack, one of the wealthiest women in America, vanished without a trace. Her disappearance would rip open the genteel facade of the high-stakes horse breeding circuit, revealing a sinister underworld where spiritualists conned the grieving and a fortune could be a death sentence. The initial investigation was as perplexing as the vanishing itself. There was no sign of a struggle in her immaculate home. Her passport, furs, and a substantial amount of cash were all left behind, ruling out a planned trip or a simple robbery. It was as if she had stepped out for a moment and never found her way back. The only things that seemed to be missing were Helen Brack herself and the answers to what happened in the days after she returned from that society ball. The trip itself became a critical focal point. She had not been traveling alone, but in the company of a man named Richard Bailey, a charming stable owner and horse trainer who moved in her wealthy social circles. It was on this trip that they had attended a lavish ball, a world of thoroughbreds and inherited fortunes. But beneath the glittering surface of that event, a much darker drama was unfolding. Helen Brack had grown deeply suspicious of Bailey and his associates. She had confided in friends that she believed she was being swindled in a series of bad horse deals, and she was planning to cut off all financial ties to him. This intention made her a threat, a wealthy woman who was about to close her purse and potentially expose a lucrative pattern of fraud. Her disappearance, coming so soon after this decisive trip, pointed to a cold and calculated silencing. The investigation soon uncovered a bizarre and ghoulish layer to the case, a world of fraudulent spiritualists who preyed on wealthy, often lonely, widows. These con artists would use seances and fake psychic readings to gain the trust of their victims, sometimes even convincing them to change their wills. While Helen Brack herself was not a known client, this predatory milieu was part of the same shadowy ecosystem that Richard Bailey inhabited. It was a world built on exploiting the vulnerable and eliminating anyone who threatened the flow of money. The Brack case demonstrated that the ballroom could be a hunting ground just as dangerous as any beach or lonely roadside, a place where a smile and a dance could mask a lethal intention. Richard Bailey was the charming face of a deadly conspiracy, a stable owner who moved with ease through the world of wealthy widows and horse enthusiasts. He presented himself as a trusted confidant and suitor. But beneath the polished exterior was a man with a criminal record for fraud, a predator who saw Helen Brack not as a person, but as a multi-million-dollar fortune waiting to be claimed. Their relationship was a masterclass in calculated deception. Bailey escorted Brack to society events, including that fateful ball, all while systematically draining her finances through a series of bogus horse deals. He sold her overpriced, often worthless animals, creating a complex web of financial dependency. But the scheme began to unravel when Helen started to suspect the truth. She confided in friends that she felt she was being swindled and was preparing to sever all ties with him. This decision turned her from a lucrative target into a dangerous liability. A wealthy, influential woman who could expose his entire criminal operation was a threat he could not afford. The evidence presented at his eventual trial painted a chilling picture. While Helen Brack's body was never found, the court was convinced that Richard Bailey had conspired to have her murdered to prevent her from cutting off his access to her wealth and revealing his fraud. He was found guilty of soliciting her murder, a landmark conviction that sent him to prison for decades. This case ripped the velvet curtain from the world of high society crime, revealing a brutal truth. For a fortune hunter like Bailey, a ballroom was not just a social venue. It was the perfect stalking ground. The music and the champagne provided a glittering camouflage for a plot as cold and calculated as any corporate takeover. The trust built on a dance floor could be weaponized, turning a romantic partnership into a death sentence. Helen Brack's disappearance created a legal labyrinth as perplexing as the mystery itself. With no body, no crime scene, and no physical evidence of a murder, prosecutors faced a seemingly insurmountable barrier. How do you prove someone was killed when the victim has been utterly erased from the world? The answer lay in a radical legal maneuver, one that would set a dramatic precedent. After the mandatory waiting period had passed, Helen Brack's family petitioned to have her declared legally dead. This was not merely a procedural step to settle her vast estate. It was a calculated tactical move in the unfolding criminal investigation. That legal declaration transformed the case from a missing persons file into a potential homicide. It allowed prosecutors to shift their entire focus, to build a case not on finding a body, but on proving the circumstances that made her death the only logical conclusion. The foundation of this no-body case was a mountain of circumstantial evidence, all pointing to a single, inescapable truth. Helen had not run away. She had no reason to. She had been eliminated. Her passport and furs remained in her closet, Her millions sat untouched in bank accounts, and most damningly, she had just resolved to cut off Richard Bailey, the man whose entire livelihood depended on her wealth. The legal finding of death gave investigators the authority to treat everyone involved as potential suspects in a murder, not just participants in a disappearance. This pivot was crucial. It changed the questions they could ask and the pressure they could apply. Richard Bailey was ultimately convicted not for murder directly, but for conspiring to murder Helen Brack to prevent her from exposing his fraudulent horse deals. That conviction was built entirely on the foundation of her legal death, a verdict that sent a shockwave through the American legal system. It proved that justice could be served even when a victim is never found, that the truth can be assembled from the haunting shape of an absence. This legal innovation opened the door for future no-body homicide trials, providing a blueprint for prosecutors to seek justice for the vanished, ensuring that a perfect disappearance does not guarantee a perfect crime. While the grand ballrooms of the elite offered one kind of cover, the simple, joyful dances of the working class provided another, far more sinister kind. In the late 1880s, the city of Austin, Texas, was gripped by a terror that would earn its perpetrator a chilling nickname, the Servant Girl Annihilator. This predator did not target society heiresses, but the most vulnerable women in the city, young African American and immigrant servants. The pattern of his attacks revealed a horrifying signature. Several of his victims were last seen alive after attending informal dances or balls held for servants and working-class citizens. These were not glittering affairs in marble halls, but vital community gatherings held in modest homes or rented halls, places where hardworking men and women could find a few hours of music and laughter. For the killer, these events were a perfect hunting ground. He could observe his victims in a public setting, note their routines, and learn which servants' quarters they returned to, often detached from the main houses of their wealthy employers. The very isolation that came with their employment made them easy targets. After an evening of dancing and socializing, a young woman would walk home alone through the dark, quiet streets, completely unaware that the friendly face from the dance might have been the last face she would ever see. The music and camaraderie of the ball created a fleeting sense of safety, a false security that the Annihilator exploited with brutal efficiency. One victim, a servant named Molly Smith, was attacked and murdered just after returning from one such dance. Another, Eliza Shelley, was killed after an evening out with friends. In each case, the ball was the last normal moment of their lives, the final memory of community before a solitary, brutal end. This killer turned a place of celebration into a place of predation, proving that the dance floor's danger knew no class boundaries. The vulnerability was not in the wealth or the poverty, but in the simple human need to connect, a need that a monster could twist into a lethal trap. Fear became a physical presence in the city of Austin, a chill that seeped into homes long after the sun went down. The rhythm of daily life was shattered. Women, particularly servants, were terrified to walk the streets after dark, and the simple, human joy of a community dance now felt like a potential death sentence. With each new attack linked to a social gathering, the city descended into a state of mass hysteria. Rumors spread faster than facts, with wild theories suggesting a monstrous beast was on the prowl or that a secret society of killers was operating in plain sight. Men began organizing armed patrols, walking the neighborhoods with shotguns and lanterns, their vigilance a testament to the profound failure of official law enforcement to offer any protection. The pressure on the local police and the legendary Texas Rangers was immense, yet their efforts proved utterly futile. They conducted countless door-to-door investigations. They made arrests based on flimsy evidence, and they pursued leads that evaporated into the humid Texas air. The killer or killers seemed to possess a ghost-like ability to strike and then melt back into the city's shadows. The Texas Rangers, figures of near mythical status in the state's folklore, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Their traditional methods of tracking outlaws across open plains were useless against an enemy who hunted in crowded boarding houses and vanished down urban alleyways. The very structure of the city, with its isolated servants' quarters and labyrinthine back streets, provided the perfect cover for a predator who understood the geography of vulnerability. This was not a foe who left a trail to be followed, but one who left only a deepening void of terror, proving that even the most famed lawman could be rendered powerless by a perfect and perfectly brutal anonymity. His method was as consistent as it was terrifying. Like a phantom, the killer would wait for the city to fall silent after its evening entertainments. His victims, having returned from a dance or a casual social visit, would secure the doors to their modest dwellings, believing themselves safe. But the annihilator was a master of intrusion. He did not force his way in with violence. Instead, he seemed to slip through locked doors and barred windows as if he were made of smoke. Once inside, his first act was one of chilling control. He would often extinguish any lamps, plunging the room into a darkness he alone commanded. Then, with a heavy, blunt object, he would strike his victims, rendering them unconscious before using a sharp weapon to deliver the final, brutal blows. The sheer brutality of the attacks suggested a deep, personal rage, yet the clinical precision of his entries pointed to a terrifyingly organized mind. He was not a creature of passion, but a predator of habit, a hunter who studied his prey and knew the exact moment to strike in the dead of night, when the memory of music and laughter had just faded from the air. This specific modus operandi, this signature of entering homes after social events, created a profile of a man who moved within the city's social fabric, a man who could observe his victims in a public setting and then follow the sound of their footsteps home. Over the years, this profile has been applied to a rogues gallery of potential suspects, each one a haunting possibility. One prominent theory pointed to a disgraced and unstable doctor, a man with the anatomical knowledge to inflict the precise wounds and the social standing to move unnoticed through different layers of Austin society. Could a professional healer have been secretly harboring a monstrous hatred, using his medical bag to conceal the tools of a killer? Another compelling suspect was a transient laborer, a man who worked on the city's new construction sites and lived in the crowded, anonymous boarding houses that dotted the city. Such a man would have known the city's lay out intimately, understood the patterns of servants coming and going, and could vanish into the transient population after each horrific attack. He would have been a ghost with a hammer, a familiar face in a crowd of workers, utterly invisible until the moment he chose to become a nightmare. The true identity of the servant girl annihilator remains one of history's most stubborn secrets, a name lost to time, leaving only the echo of his method in the shadow of his rage. The gilded ballrooms and crowded dance halls were not the only stages for a perfect disappearance. In the heart of the French Revolution, a royal prison cell became the setting for the most politically charged vanishing act in European history. The lost Dauphin, Louis Charles, the young son of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, was the ultimate prize in a brutal power struggle. After his parents were executed by guillotine, the 8-year-old boy was imprisoned alone in the Temple, a cold, fortified tower in Paris. He was the uncrowned king of France in the eyes of royalists, a living symbol of the monarchy that the new republic was determined to erase. His captors needed him alive as a bargaining chip, but they needed him broken, a silent, malleable pawn. For months, he was kept in solitary confinement. His world shrunk to a single, filthy room. Then, in the spring of 1795, the boy who was officially known as Louis XVII simply ceased to be. The government announced he had died of tuberculosis, a convenient and common end for a child in such conditions. But the official story was riddled with contradictions from the very start. There was no public viewing of the body, no state funeral befitting a prince. The heart that was supposedly removed during the autopsy became a grisly relic passed between hands, its authenticity forever in question. The swift, secret burial in an unmarked grave felt less like a ceremony and more like a disposal. It was as if the revolution itself had swallowed the boy whole, leaving behind only a hollow echo and a question that would torment France for generations. Had the last son of the Bourbon monarchy truly died in that tower, or had he been spirited away to safety, his disappearance staged to secure his life? The mystery of the lost Dauphin was born not from a dance, but from a deafening silence behind prison walls. Legends began to circulate almost immediately, fueled by the strange behavior of his jailers and the absence of any credible witnesses to his final days. One persistent tale suggests that his escape was not a frantic flight, but a carefully orchestrated substitution, possibly arranged during a covert gathering within the temple itself. While not a ball in the traditional sense, these clandestine meetings of royalist sympathizers or even corrupt officials acting for a foreign power served the same function as the grandest society event. They provided the noise, the movement, and the comings and goings necessary to mask a profound deception. In the shadows of a supposed administrative function or a guarded celebration among his captors, a silent, sickly boy could have been swapped for a dying orphan, his identity erased as he was led to freedom through a crowd of conspirators. This theory transforms his imprisonment from a simple tragedy into an epic subterfuge, a plot where the ballroom was a prison common room and the mask was the face of a dead child. For decades afterward, over 100 men would step forward across Europe and America, each claiming to be the lost king. They carried with them fragments of memory, supposed royal birthmarks, and tales of a mysterious rescue. Some were convincing, many were obvious frauds, but all were testament to a nation's desperate need for a different ending, a hope that a prince could escape the blade and the darkness, disappearing into a new life just as his old world crumbled to dust. The decades following the official death of the Dauphin were haunted by the ghosts of princes. More than 100 men across Europe and America stepped from the shadows, each insisting he was the boy who had escaped the temple prison. Their stories were a strange and persistent echo of a national trauma, a collective yearning for a different, more hopeful ending to the royal family's grim story. These pretenders came from all walks of life, from humble clockmakers to wandering adventurers, yet they all shared one compelling trait: an unwavering conviction in their own royal blood. They presented fragments of memory, described secret rescues, and pointed to physical marks they claimed were the Bourbon birthright. Their very existence became a cultural phenomenon, a testament to how powerfully the myth of the lost king had captured the public imagination. The most compelling and persistent of these claimants was a man named Karl Wilhelm Naundorf, a German clockmaker with a mysterious past and an uncanny knowledge of the French court's most intimate details. Naundorf arrived in Paris in the 1830s, declaring he was Louis XVII. He did not just claim the title, he lived it. He could describe the layout of the Palace of Versailles with startling accuracy, recall the names and faces of obscure courtiers, and even identify secret passages and hidden rooms known only to the royal family. He bore a striking physical resemblance to the Bourbons, and his mannerisms, those subtle, unteachable habits of aristocracy, seemed to convince many who met him. Most astonishingly, he recognized former servants of the Queen and recounted childhood events that had never been made public. His knowledge was so specific, so deeply personal, that it baffled his supporters and infuriated his detractors. How could a simple clockmaker from Prussia know such things unless he had truly lived them? The French legal system was forced to take him seriously, and his case dragged through the courts for years, a bizarre legal battle over a ghost. The government, of course, fought him at every turn, refusing to acknowledge any possibility that the official narrative was a lie. The political stakes were simply too high. Recognizing a lost dauphin would have thrown the entire post-revolutionary order into chaos, threatening the reign of the new king, Louis Philippe. Despite this opposition, Naundorf attracted a small but devoted following of believers, including some surviving members of the royal household who, after meeting him, became convinced of his identity. He was not just a pretender. He was a man who had built an entire life around a single, monumental claim, and he pursued that claim with a determination that bordered on obsession. The enduring power of the lost king myth lies in this very human desire for a second chance, for a story where the innocent child escapes the darkness. The pretenders, whether frauds or tragically deluded souls, offered a form of narrative justice. They allowed people to believe that the revolution had not completely succeeded in erasing the old world, that a spark of the monarchy had survived. Each claimant was a living question mark placed beside the official history, a challenge to a story that felt too neat, too convenient. Their failures in court did little to diminish their hold on the popular mind. The true fate of Louis Charles may never be known, but the century-long parade of men claiming his name proves that a disappearance can be more powerful than any death. A mystery once planted in the fertile soil of legend can grow forever. Ambrose Bierce was a man who had spent his entire life dissecting the absurdities of war and human hypocrisy with a surgeon's precision. His most famous work, The Devil's Dictionary, defined a future as that period of time in which our affairs prosper, our friends are true, and our happiness is assured. By the winter of 1913, at the age of 71, he seemed to have decided his own future was complete. He embarked on a journey to Mexico, a nation then convulsing in the chaos of its revolution. His last known communication was a letter sent from Chihuahua, a place teeming with rebel soldiers and political intrigue. In it, he wrote with a strange and unsettling finality. He stated, "If you hear of my being stood up against a Mexican stone wall and shot to rags, please know that I think it a pretty good way to depart this life. It beats old age, disease, or falling down the cellar stairs." Then the master of the written word fell permanently silent. The specifics of his final hours are shrouded in conflicting tales, but one persistent account places him at a social gathering, perhaps even a military ball held by the forces of the revolutionary leader Pancho Villa. It was the kind of event where a grizzled American journalist could gather material, share a drink with soldiers, and then, quite simply, walk out of the door and into a legend. He reportedly told companions he was heading for the nearby mountains, and then he was gone. The man who had made a career out of sharp observation left behind not a single clue to be observed. His disappearance felt less like a tragedy and more like a final, masterfully crafted piece of satire, a vanishing act that mocked all attempts at a neat and tidy ending. The theories about his fate are as varied as the man himself was complex. Did the cynical writer finally find the noble death in battle he had once romanticized, caught in a skirmish between warring factions and buried in an unmarked grave? Or did he, having witnessed enough of mankind's follies, simply decide to stage his own exit, wandering deeper into the wilderness until he became one with the landscape he had chosen? Perhaps he fell victim to the very violence he had gone to see, his life ending not with a punchline, but with a random, brutal act. The mystery of Ambrose Bierce endures because it feels so perfectly in character. He disappeared into the backdrop of a revolution, a plotline so dramatic it could have been pulled from one of his own stories. His final journey was the ultimate rewrite, an author erasing his own final chapter and leaving the rest of us to wonder forever what might have been written on that last missing page. His journey south was a deliberate walk toward the storm. Ambrose Bierce, having long chronicled the senseless brutality of the American Civil War, was now drawn to the explosive chaos of the Mexican Revolution. He was not a tourist, he was a correspondent, and his goal was to attach himself to the army of the legendary rebel leader Pancho Villa, to witness firsthand the theater of war one last time. His final letters, sent back to friends and family, were not the writings of a weary old man, but of someone almost giddily embracing the unknown. They crackled with a strange, cheerful energy, filled with witty observations and a palpable sense of freedom. He wrote of good health and high spirits, his tone light, even as he described moving through a landscape torn by violence. This cheerful acceptance of his own mortality was the most puzzling clue he left behind. It was as if he had already made peace with whatever end awaited him, viewing it not as a tragedy, but as the final dramatic scene in a life lived on his own terms. The theories surrounding his fate are as dramatic as the man himself. One of the most persistent holds that he was caught in the siege of Ojinaga, a brutal battle between Villa's forces and federal troops. In the chaos of the fighting, the 71-year-old writer could have easily been felled by a stray bullet. His body left unidentified in the mass confusion, buried in a common grave with the soldiers he had come to observe. Another, more sinister theory suggests he was executed by a villa firing squad. The revolutionary leader was known for his mercurial temper, and perhaps Bierce's famously sharp tongue and cynical wit finally offended the wrong general, leading to that stone wall he had so casually written about. But the most captivating theory is that his entire journey was an elaborate piece of performance art, a final story written with his own life. The cheerful letters, the journey into a war zone, it was all a carefully constructed setup for the ultimate vanishing act. Having spent a lifetime crafting fictions about death and folly, did he decide to create his own, leaving the stage before age or infirmity could force him off? He walked into the Mexican mountains and simply chose not to walk out, becoming a ghost by his own design, the author of his own enduring mystery. A New York Supreme Court judge is perhaps the last person you would expect to simply vanish. Yet on a warm August evening in 1930, Joseph Force Crater, a man at the very pinnacle of the city's legal and political world, stepped into a taxi on West 45th Street and evaporated from the face of the earth. He had just enjoyed a steak dinner and a Broadway show with a showgirl and a friend, a perfectly normal evening for a man of his stature. But Judge Crater was not just a respected jurist. He was a political insider, a key player in the notoriously corrupt Tammany Hall machine that controlled New York City. His world was not one of public courtrooms and transparent rulings, but of smoke, filled back rooms and clandestine parties that functioned as high-stakes political balls. In these exclusive gatherings, the city's most powerful men mingled with gangsters, police commissioners, and wealthy industrialists, cutting deals that shaped the destiny of millions. The music and laughter at these events masked the quiet exchange of envelopes and the whispered promises of judicial favors. For a man like Crater, a social outing was never just a social outing. It was a move in a complex and dangerous game. His disappearance the night after attending one such gathering was not a random act. It was a move that sent shockwaves through the entire corrupt system. Just days before he vanished, Crater had withdrawn a staggering $20,000 from his bank accounts, a sum worth nearly $400,000 today. He had also collected a mysterious bundle of important papers from his courthouse office. Was he preparing to pay a blackmailer, or was he planning to flee from one? The official investigation was a masterclass in obfuscation. Witnesses were suddenly unavailable, leads went cold, and the powerful figures in Crater's circle closed ranks. The very political machine that had elevated him now seemed intent on burying the truth. The most plausible theories all point back to the toxic environment of Tammany Hall. Perhaps he knew too much about a pending investigation and was silenced by his own associates before he could talk. Maybe he had double-crossed the wrong powerful figure in a financial scheme and paid the ultimate price. Or in a twist worthy of a crime novel, he could have been the victim of his own ambition, caught in a deadly trap set by rival factions within the machine. His empty judicial robe, left hanging in his chambers, became a potent symbol of the void he left behind, a constant reminder that in the gilded world of political power, a man could be made to disappear as easily as a secret in a crowded room. The spectacle of the ball in all its forms created a perfect storm for disappearance. Whether it was a Gilded Age cotillion, a political soiree, or a simple community dance, these events shared a dangerous alchemy of noise, motion, and trust. The very crowd hired to witness your glory could also be the crowd that failed to see you vanish. This shared vulnerability connects Dorothy Arnold to the Beaumont children and Judge Crater to the servant girls of Austin. In each case, the social gathering provided a stage where a person could transition from being the center of attention to becoming a ghost, their final steps muffled by music and their absence obscured by the cheerful chaos of a departing crowd. The ballroom was a place of masks, both literal and figurative, where true intentions could be hidden behind a smile or a dance, and where a friendly face could be the most dangerous weapon of all. This abuse of social privilege is a dark thread running through these tales. The Arnolds used their wealth to control the narrative, potentially obscuring the truth about Dorothy. The political machine of Tammany Hall used its influence to bury the secrets surrounding Judge Crater. In the world of Helen Brack, immense fortune did not buy safety. It made her a target for a predator who saw her wealth as his own. Privilege, it seems, could build a fortress, but it could also paint a target on your back, leaving you isolated within a gilded cage. These stories are also products of their time, mysteries magnified by the era's limited forensic technology. There were no security cameras on Fifth Avenue, no DNA analysis to identify the servant girl annihilator, no electronic records to trace the movements of Ambrose Bierce. A disappearance could be almost absolute, a void into which a person could sink without leaving a digital echo. Investigations relied on fallible human memory and rudimentary detective work, allowing cold trails to freeze over with stunning speed. This combination of factors, the social camouflage of the event, the corrupting influence of power or wealth, and the technological silence, left behind a landscape fertile for legend. We are left with unanswered questions that have echoed for decades, even centuries. Was the lost Dauphin truly a clockmaker in Germany? Did Dorothy Arnold find freedom as a rider in some distant city? The lack of closure is haunting, but it is also what gives these stories their enduring power. They are not just cold cases. They are open-ended narratives that allow us to project our own hopes and fears onto the void. They force us to question the very nature of identity and memory, and to wonder if, in the right circumstances, any of us could simply step out of the light and into a mystery. These stories of the vanished leave us with more questions than answers, a gallery of ghosts haunting the edges of history. From the gilded ballrooms of New York to the revolutionary battlefields of Mexico, a single social event served as the final, glittering stage for lives cut short or erased entirely. These mysteries expose the dark underbelly of glamour and power, revealing how a crowded room can be the loneliest place on earth, and how immense wealth or status can create both an impenetrable fortress and an inescapable trap. The music stops, the guests depart, and one person simply fails to return to the light. These are not just cold cases from a bygone era. They are timeless reminders of the fragility of identity and the unsettling truth that the world we build to see and be seen can also be the world that watches us disappear without a trace. We may never know the true fates of Dorothy Arnold, the Beaumont children, or Judge Crater. But their stories live on in our collective imagination. What do you think happened? Do you believe Dorothy staged her own escape? Or was she the victim of a terrible accident? Was the lost dauphin truly Karl Wilhelm Naundorf? Share your own theories and thoughts on these haunting cases in the comments below. The conversation is part of what keeps their memory alive. If these deep dives into historical scandals and unsolved mysteries have captivated you, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the shadows of the past.